Hey everyone and welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be covering 3 things I wish I knew about climbing in solo queue years ago. These are things that I think would have streamlined my process massively, and I just wish someone was able to give me this information essentially. So let me know your thoughts, let's dive straight in. So for tip number 1 guys, it is review your games before your next block. Okay, there's a bit of a background story for this one, so kind of sit tight. Essentially, I think this was a few months ago, someone wrote to me in the Midland Academy saying, Curtis, I don't resonate or I don't gel, I don't click with your current 3-block process where we play, review, play, review, play, review. He said, it just doesn't work for me. I don't feel like I'm getting the learning. I don't really see the learning cycle happening. I feel like by the time I'm getting to my 3rd game, I'm still making the same mistakes anyway. From my last block, I just don't feel like it's really optimal for me. So rather than brushing this guy off, I started to really question the 3-block process and see if there are any other alternatives. So I experimented with a bunch of things, one of which was reviewing all of my games before my next block rather than reviewing in between each game. So rather than going game review, game review, game review, I would actually start my block by reviewing all 3 of my games from my last block and then actually only doing miniature reviews in between each game. And I found this to have massive positive results on my solo queue. I want to kind of list a few things here and maybe kind of dive into why this actually works so well for me. And again, this may not work for everyone, but it worked very well for me and it's worked for a lot of people and a lot of my clients inside the Midland Academy. So I've approached warming up in League a lot from like the micro perspective, like warming up your hands and your feel for the keyboard, hence why I've been a large advocate for LOL Dodge game. But you gotta remember, League is also a mental game, and one of the big or most important parts of warming up is getting your mind in the right place. Out of everything that I've done, watching motivational videos, listening to music clips, watching montages, name it, I've done it. Nothing beats watching your old reviews, because what it does, it gets you in the right mindset. It literally puts you back in time to exactly what you were thinking and what you were feeling during that block. Nothing gets my brain working as well as that. And because you got to remember, like as in the analogy that I use to describe this is when we read a book, right? When we read a book, we have a bookmark. And when we pick up that book for the next time, we go to that bookmark moment. But before we read ahead, what do? We actually sometimes skim over the past few pages before that point, so we actually get context from where we're at. Oftentimes, I found when I'm in or jumping into a normal 3-block without having done the reviews beforehand, I kind of lose track of what I was thinking of during that last block, what my mindset was like, what I was struggling with, what I was frustrated with, where was I directing my attention, what were some of the problems I was facing. And when I start to really dive into these areas, looking over my past reviews, I'm so switched on, I'm so ready to go. It's like I've just picked up that book and I'm ready to start exactly where I left off. I don't want to have to spend 2 games to now get to just where I left off before. I'm now in the thick of it, ready to go exactly where I left off. And another thing I found, number 2, was that the problems that I was facing before, I couldn't actively find solutions for because I guess, a lot of the pain from those losses or the negative emotions or the ego or whatever you want to call it, the narratives I have at the time, especially after losing a game, can blind me from seeing optimal decisions or blind me from getting into or having a good quality review essentially. And what I found, the next day you sleep on it, you come back, you got a refreshed mindset. Holy moly, I'm seeing all these things that I never even spotted yesterday. It's almost as if someone else is watching this review. It's not me, it's kind of like, it's like someone else. It's really weird. It's a really weird experience when you do it, especially when you're reviewing losses or tough losses. So I found it's been a great tool for having good quality reviews. And the last benefit I found was that things that really frustrated me or really angered me during that block, now that I see it with the new fresh perspective and the context I have now, it kind of humbles me. It's like, Curtis, get your shit together. Like, why are you so angry over that? You contributed to this problem by, being late to the fight or taking that bad trade before, which took, you're forced to take a bad reset and then you couldn't help the team. Like, I'm able to take maximum responsibility a lot easier. So guys, give it a go. It may not be for everyone. For me, at least, it's been an absolute game changer. Hence why I'm naming it the number 1 tip. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So for tip number 2, guys, I've realized amongst doing many coaching sessions in my own solo queue journey that the majority of mistakes don't stem from the player or myself not knowing what to do. It's generally me not understanding what the enemy wants to do. You got to remember that League is 95% anticipation. Watching things from the enemy perspective speeds up learning tenfold because League is mainly about anticipation. You benefit more from understanding why the enemy played it the way they did, rather than why you wanted it to play the way you did. So rather than kind of explaining this with just words, I want to show you a series of examples that really get across my point and exactly how I use this tool to review in my own games. So in this example, I'm going to show you how I literally use this tool to help break down a problem and get some really good quality learning. So essentially my client here, his name's Dr. Doom in Game, he basically said to me, hey Curtis, I was able to review this afterwards and I just wasn't sure if I would be confident in making the right choice next time. And I don't even know how I would come to that conclusion in future games. And it will make more sense when we get into it. But essentially he's playing Corki here and I think he just solo killed the Akshan mid. He gets a reset, spends his gold, comes back, TP's in. And as you can see, the Karma on his team ends up looking for a roam topside here. You'll see the Karma roams to potentially complement this Jack, so maybe set up a kill on the enemy Ornn. His jungler's Viego also pathing topside. So you'll see in a second here, he collects the wave and he starts moving topside, knowing that a play is likely going to happen. Akshan also does the same. Obviously, Akshan's gone missing. You'll see him actually move up onto topside. He pings the path of Akshan as well, and he's hovering. Now, he doesn't know if the fight's going to get extended or not, and his question was essentially, Curtis, how do I know whether I need to stick around here or if I should actually just go back mid thinking that the play is over? Right? What do I do? Because I mean, Akshan could theoretically be stealth and could be roaming bold or whatever. We don't know what exactly Akshan is doing. So he decides to hover a little bit, sees that nothing was happening, and then starts waddling back bot side. Then it's too late. The Akshan and Vi make a play, and they end up getting a little pick here. And yeah, Akshan gets a bunch of kills, whatever. And the play was a little bit messy, and Akshan ended up just getting something that he felt as though if he hovered, that never would have happened. And his question was essentially, Curtis, how do I know that Akshan would commit to this? How do I know if I should stay or not? And he was kind of going over this over and over again. He couldn't come to a conclusion. And the first thing I said to him is, okay, let's understand this situation from Akshan's perspective. If we are Akshan in this situation, how would we be thinking? Because this guy's actually an Akshan player as well. It helps if you play that champion. If not, that's okay. Now, to give a little bit of context, I believe this Akshan is really far behind. I think he's like 2-5, and he has, I think he just has Eclipse. Now, imagine if you're a 2-5 Eclipse Akshan, not even going crit, going lethality, into a Jax, a Fed Viego, and a Fed Corki. Imagine what your mindset's going to be like. You are desperate, right? You are incredibly desperate. So you're looking for any window in the game. You're looking for anything. No matter how scrappy it is, you're going to try and get to that play. Now, with that context being in mind, with that, if we were to understand how it would feel like to be Akshan here, especially for him knowing he's an Akshan player, of course he's going to try and be desperate to look for something here, especially since he doesn't even, it's not even invaluable to make a play bot side because Ashe is behind. It's not even the wave's not even a good spot. It's low percentage. This is where all the action is. He's thinking, and then that Akshan is very, very, very desperate. Now, with that context in mind, he's like, oh, that makes total sense. Of course he's going to go for this. It's very, very likely that he's going to commit for this. He doesn't want to just go back mid and be like, the play's probably over. I just want to continue to farm with the Corki. He wants to find any excuse to get out of that lane versus Corki. This is exactly what he wants. This is part of his identity, right? And so this is how I use the tool. I go to these situations, and if I'm ever unsure, I get out of my own head. I don't look at it from my perspective. What would it feel like if I were them? Why would they make that decision? If I was them, why would I make that decision? And that's how you make long-lasting change. That's how you really start to get a very deep understanding about the game. So I use this same tool for situations in lane as well. This was another client here. He's playing Orianna into Victor. He's versing a Trundle jungle. His jungler's all the way over here, and he actually has no flash. He's an immobile mage into a Trundle with no flash. Right? You'll see in a second, he pushes up. He actually warded the wrong side of the lane. And you'll see in a second as he walks up, Trundle comes by, pretty straightforward, beats his head in and ends up dying. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, you can look at this many ways. You can look at this from a raw fundamental perspective, saying, you know, just ward and lean. You know, it's a poor ward location. You're not leaning to your ward location. Your ward's not even in line with your vision. I mean, you're walking past the vision line here. There's many ways you can tackle this. But in terms of like really increasing your threat assessment understanding, let's look at it from Trundle's perspective. If you're Trundle in this situation and you know Amumu just reset off a play, you have a window to do something, you know Orianna has no flash, why wouldn't you want to go mid for this play? Look at it. It's such a free kill. And sometimes, I know this is very basic for those of you who understand this, but for people who don't have a very sophisticated understanding of threat assessment, it's a game changer. It's like, oh yeah, if I'm Trundle, of course I'm going to go mid here. I mean, look how volatile this is. Look how vulnerable I am. So sometimes looking at it from the other side of the coin, not as if we are this player, as if we're the other player. What would it feel like to be the Trundle in this situation? And that is how, again, you actually develop another level or a much deeper level of threat assessment. So in summary for this tip, guys, before you write off a mistake as, oh yeah, I'll just do that next time, make sure you really understand why the enemy made the decision the way they did, because this is what's going to create lasting change. So for tip number 3, guys, before we even get into the advice itself, I need to give you guys a little bit of context and background information. How many times have you, during your solo queue journey, even just this season, have you been in a rut? Whether you're really low confidence, you're not expressing your best self, you know, you're losing games that you know you should win, and then finally, maybe it's 3 weeks later, holy moly, this entire time I've been playing with low intensity, I've been in a massive rut, I've lost a lot of LP, and you're like, what the hell just happened? You kind of wake up from a dream, and it's like, I've just wasted the last 3 weeks. And, you know, I've been fascinated by this concept because what I've realized that climbing is 2 parts. Climbing is, number 1, genuinely getting better at the game and expressing your best self, but it's also reducing self-sabotage. So in order to reduce self-sabotage, we've got to understand, where does this all start? Where does this rut, or whatever you want to call, where the hell does it start? Because it happens to myself as well. And I'm sick of just riding this massive rut where, you know, I'm just losing games or losing LP for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not even getting better. I'm not expressing my best self. Where the hell does this start? So I have a theory about this. I want to kind of show it in a version of a cycle, essentially. So where it generally starts is that we have a series of genuinely unlucky games. Games that were very tough. You actually played really well, you know, playing in accordance to your champ's identity. You're doing your job, great fundamentals. You're ticking all the boxes. And you just get unlucky games. We all have them. It's what I call 30% losses, although I don't like referring to that video because it just stirs up a lot of negative emotions. But essentially, we get those unlucky games, right? And sometimes you can get 3 unlucky games in a row. And then you might get a really, really close game that you just lose at the 40-minute mark. Maybe it was theoretically winnable, but you just lose it. And before you know it, you've had maybe 2 0-3 blocks you've lost, or maybe you lost 8 games in a row, or you're 1-7, 1-6, and it's starting to take a toll on our mental. And the way it works is that each loss that happens, it incrementally takes a toll on the quality of your reviews. So at the start, you're, you know, happy chappy, you're taking maximum responsibility, hopefully, getting into the reviews, seeing how you contributed to the losses. But each one you get chipped away, chip away, chip away, chipped away. By the time you're 0-8 or you're 6 losses deep or 7 losses deep, who's going to sit there and actually get into the review and be like, okay, Curtis, you know, I got trolled this game, I got griefed or this and that. Let's see how I can take maximum responsibility. I mean, that's ideally what would happen. But how many people can you say honestly do that? And I'm sure we've all been here at some point where all we're looking for in the review essentially is what will make us feel better being a victim. So we're looking for the moments where we get griefed, or we're looking for the moments where our teammate loses a game for us. We're looking in the review, not for things that we could have done better, but we're spotting the things that kind of help us, I guess, feed that narrative that it is really out of our control, right? And then also what happens, or what coincides with this, we actually believe that, oh my God, I'm doing all these things right. There must be some crazy sophisticated reason that I'm not climbing. Maybe some advanced macro shit that's going on that must be the reason. I've got to find this reason that I'm not climbing. And then as this continues on, the cycle continues on, what's the first thing that goes to shit, guys? Our fundamentals. Our fundamentals start to get sloppy, right? And we don't even realize this. This is the scary thing. When you're 10 games deep now, 12 games deep, 15 games deep, and you're in this rut mentally, we actually just skim over and look over those early game deaths that we have. We skim over those level 3 ganks that we died to. We skim over those times where we blue flash to that jungler. We skim over that time where we're actually late to that skirmish. We skim over our bad wave states, our bad CSing, our bad trading, lack of warding and leaning. We skim over the fundamentals because, they're not that important. It's just the mid game. It has to be some complex decision that's holding us back, or it has to be some teammate that's holding us back. We actually completely lose focus on the fundamentals. And we start to create these crazy narratives. Then finally, either you drop so low that you kind of somehow, regain your footing somehow, or you take a break, or your coach helps you, or you have a friend, whatever it might be, and they look over your game and they say something like, dude, you're dying to a level 3 gank, or what the hell is this? Like, it's just basic mistakes. And then you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. And then typically you start from scratch, and then you work your way up, and then you get back to where you were. And then you feel stupid the whole long. You're like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense. It was actually pretty basic. So my tip here in a long-winded way, guys, and this is a tool that I tend to use for myself, if I ever feel that my problems are super complex, or I feel like I'm in a rut, or I feel like I'm getting griefed by my teammates all the time, or I feel like that's a narrative that is forming, or I feel like I'm getting bogged down and I feel like I'm not improving, generally, I'll kind of do a quick calibration and I'll fix my first 8 minutes. I'll look over my first 8 minutes to make sure that my fundamentals are sound. Am I dying to any early ganks? Am I blowing my flash to any ganks? Am I jungle tracking first clear? Am I having good wave states, good resets? So I understand my matchup. Just get into the details for the first 8 minutes. I guarantee you, if you're feeling you're in some way, shape, or form in a similar process or cycle that I've just described, going back and making sure your first 8 minutes of the game is very sound is the surefire way to make sure you're getting back on track and expressing your best self. This has worked for me. It's worked for some of my clients. So please give this a go. And so look, I'd love to hear comments on this one as well from you guys. I hope you all took at least one thing away from this video. These are tips that I wish I knew way earlier in my solo queue journey. Try it out. Otherwise, cheers and have a good one, guys.